Hi, I'm Dr. Ashley Holcomb, and for the next few weeks, we're going to take a closer look at developmental trauma. Today, we're going to be talking about what developmental trauma is and how complexly it can impact a person. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about how people heal from developmental trauma and how to help a partner or a child who's experienced developmental trauma. Before we get started, you may want to take a look at my video on complex trauma, which is entitled Why Trauma Doesn't Always Look Like PTSD. This will help you get a better sense of the language. And as always, don't forget to check out my other videos and to click below to subscribe. If you recall from my video on complex trauma, there's a big difference between one traumatic event and a pattern of interpersonal trauma. And in particular, developmental trauma is the term we use to refer to complex trauma that happens in childhood and causes an impact to the child's development. This could mean abuse, neglect, living in a home with domestic violence, bullying, or other such experiences. I've also met a lot of people who maybe don't think about themselves as having been through developmental trauma. Maybe people who lived in constant fear about where food was going to come from, or constant fear of being criticized or ridiculed by parents, or who are often invalidated by their parents. And all of these kinds of experiences can also be traumatizing and can also cause an impact to a person's development. In all, childhood traumatic experiences are actually really common. There's a lot of research showing that repeated interpersonal trauma in childhood can have a widespread impact on a child's development that lasts with them throughout adulthood. From a person's ability to connect with other people, we often refer to this as their attachment style, to a person's ability to regulate their emotions and their behavior, from being able to concentrate and complete complex tasks to physical health problems, from negative self-esteem and negative beliefs about yourself to feeling so disconnected from yourself and from the world that things don't always feel real. There's a lot of different areas that can be impacted by trauma. That doesn't mean every person who experiences trauma in childhood will see an impact in all of these areas, but it's not uncommon to see impact in multiple areas. So then, how do you know if problems you're experiencing in your life are connected to experiences of childhood trauma? You may not. Developmental trauma, it's so interwoven into a person's life that you may not get the connection until you have some kind of experience that makes that connection obvious to you. But there's a few things that might be helpful for you to consider. Oftentimes, the symptoms that show up make sense based on the type of trauma that that person experienced. And very often, they're some form of attempting to protect the person. They make sense in the context of the trauma. So sometimes it's helpful to ask if you're seeing behavior, you're seeing symptoms in your life, and you're not sure why they're there. Ask something like, what is the purpose for this symptom? How is it protecting me? How does it connect or not to what I experienced when I was a child? I know today's subject was heavy, and I want to give you hope. There is healing that is possible for people who've been through developmental trauma. Next week, I'm going to talk about a little bit of what you can expect from trauma-informed treatment, and I'm going to give you a few resources that you can use. But please, please remember that these videos are not a substitute for therapy. A big part of the healing process, especially for trauma, is treatment with a trauma-informed therapist. Yes, trauma can have a big impact, but it doesn't have to write your whole story for you. You get to decide where your next chapter goes, and you too can live a life of abundance. I'll see you next week.